Hello, dear friends. Everyone wants to go to heaven, but no one wants to die. We carry the craving for immortality in our genetics. We are traumatized by the loss of loved ones. And we know that there are other intelligent human races from advanced civilizations that lived thousands of years. But we also know that there are plans to reduce the population because we are in the way of the rich in the Guatemala. Alchemists like Volcano or Nicolas Flamel had no doubts about immortality, but modern science is still asking questions, and we are all searching for the Philosopher's stone. Opinion article. Looking for immortality. Scientists believe it is possible to become immortal. Russians create a roadmap to immortality. Involves highly advanced artificial intelligence systems. French alchemist Nicolas Flamel became immortal. Cadiz, Spain's hot zone for UFO sightings. Mexico takes steps to reinforce its border with Guatemala. Philippines detects 220 Chinese ships in a disputed area. War on citizens' liberty in the UK. Volcano erupts near Iceland's capital city. Impressive images of lava rivers near Reykjavik. Iceland may be the happiest country in the world, survey finds. Jupiter and Saturn and 2 eclipses start this spring. Perseverance records high-pitched scratching sound on Mars. Cryptocurrencies are using body activity data. Hundreds of people in Spain call for a decent housing law. 90% of Syria's oil is now in US hands. Oil price plunges in biggest drop so far this year. Air Force secretly acquired new Russian missile system. World faces unprecedented threat of food shortages. 150 million Hindus at Mahakumbh Mela festival in Haridwar. Let's start. Russian researchers Alexei Turchin and Maxim Chernyakov, who belong to the transhumanist movement, wrote a paper explaining the roadmap to immortality, involving super-intelligent artificial intelligence systems powered by Dyson Spheres, as the primary technology could one day make resurrection possible. The authors said the power source behind the artificial intelligence would be so powerful that it would require Dyson Spheres, a mega structure of solar panels that spans a star and captures a large percentage of its energy output. A Dyson sphere is a hypothetical megastructure proposed in 1960 by physicist Freeman Dyson in a Science magazine article titled "Search for Artificial Stellar Sources of Infrared Radiation." It is a spherical shell of astronomical size around the star, which would make it possible to take full advantage of the star's light and thermal energy. Turchin and Chernyakov wrote that there is no evidence for an afterlife, but there is also no proof that medical death is the end of subjective experience, or that death is irreversible or immortality impossible. The paper, first reported by Popular Mechanics magazine, is titled "Ranking Approaches to Technological Resurrection," which offers a roadmap to immortality. Death appears to be a permanent event, but there is no real evidence for its irreversibility, the authors write. And while no method is currently possible, many may become feasible with future technological development. Turchin and Chernyakov examine conventional and future technologies for making humankind immortal, from cryonics to uploading brains to the cloud, and then transplanting them into cloned bodies. They said that strong artificial intelligence would be the most critical technology for offloading brain contents, but that technology could be years away. The development of artificial intelligence is going quite fast, but we are still far from being able to download a human into a computer, touching to Russia beyond. If we want to do it with a good chance of success, the count of the year 2600, no doubt. The paper describes life as a continuous stream of subjective experiences, and death as the end of that stream. Immortality, for researchers, is an endless stream of life, and resurrection is the continuation of that same string of experiences after an arbitrarily long gap. Definition of immortality. Immortality is eternal life, being exempt from death, endless existence. Some modern species may possess biological immortality. Certain scientists, futurists, and philosophers have theorized about the immortality of the human body, and some have suggested that human immortality may be achieved in the first decades of the 21st century. Other advocates believe that life extension is a more achievable goal in the near term, and that immortality awaits further advances in research. The absence of aging would provide humans with biological immortality, but not invulnerability to death by disease or physical trauma. Whether the process of internal immortality will be realized in the coming years depends primarily on neural research in the case of immortality throughout an immortalized cell line. What forms an endless human life would take, or whether an immaterial soul exists and possesses immortality, has been a major focus of religion, as well as a subject of speculation and debate. In religious contexts, immortality is often claimed to be one of the divinity's promises to humans who practice virtue or follow divine law. Life-prolonging substances. Some scientists believe that increasing the amount of radio of telomerase in the body, a naturally occurring enzyme that helps maintain the protective caps on the ends of chromosomes, could prevent cells from dying and ultimately lead to a longer, healthier life expectancy. A team of researchers from the Spanish National Cancer Center, Madrid, tested the hypothesis in mice. It was found that mice that were genetically modified to produce 10 times the normal levels of telomerase lived 50% longer than normal mice. The problem with telomerase is that it increases the risk of cancer. Philosopher's Stone. The Philosopher's Stone is a legendary alchemical substance said to be able to convert base metals such as lead into gold or silver. Occasionally, it was also believed to be an elixir of life, useful for rejuvenation and plausibly achieving immortality. For many centuries, it was the most coveted touch in alchemy. The Philosopher's Stone was the central symbol of the mystical terminology of alchemy, symbolizing perfection at its highest expression, enlightenment, and heavenly bliss. Many mystical and magical properties have been attributed to the Philosopher's Stone. The most frequently mentioned properties are the ability to transmute metals into gold or silver, and the ability to cure all kinds of diseases, and prolong the life of anyone who consumes a small portion of the Philosopher's Stone. Other properties mentioned include creation of perpetually burning lamps, transmutation of common crystals into precious stones and diamonds, reactivation of dead plants, creation of flexible or malleable glass, or the creation of a clone or homunculus. The Philosopher's Stone is created by the alchemical method known as the opus magnum or the Great Work. It is often expressed as a series of color changes or chemical processes, and the instructions for creating the Philosopher's Stone are varied. When expressed as a series of chemical processes, it often includes 7 or 12 final stages in its multiplication and in its projection. Elias Ashmole and the anonymous author of Gloria Mundi 1620 claimed that its history goes back to Adam, who acquired the knowledge of the stone directly from God. This knowledge is said to have been passed down through the biblical patriarchs, giving them their longevity. The legend of the stone was also compared to the biblical story of Solomon's temple and at the cornerstone singular described in Psalm 118. The theoretical roots describing the creation of the stone go back to Greek philosophy. Later alchemists used the classical element, the concept of anima mundi, and the creation stories presented in texts such as Plato's Timaeus as analogies for their process. According to Plato, the 4 elements are derived from a common source of prima materia, first matter, associated with chaos. Prima materia is also the alchemical name assigned to the raw material for the creation of the Philosopher's Stone, which was said by Isaac Newton. The importance of this first philosophical question persisted throughout the history of alchemy. One of the characteristics of alchemy is that in the writings a confusing language is established, with the intention of misleading whoever wants to build the stone. The elixir of eternal life would be an infusion made by soaking the stone in a liquid. Afterwards, a small amount would be drunk. There are several myths about what would happen when drinking. In the most popular one states that all the hair and nails would fall out, and that afterwards a renewed young and strong body would emerge. It would no longer be necessary to eat, if at all. It would only be for pleasure. This would make the human being immortal. The Universal Panacea is a medical medicine that would cure all diseases or even prolong life indefinitely. It was sought by alchemists for centuries, especially in the Middle Ages. The word panacea comes from the Greek word panakos, meaning all-purpose remedy. It is said that Nicolas Flamel and his wife Perenelle obtained immortality, although others say that they died and were buried between 1410 and 1418 in the cemetery of Saint Jacques de la Bouchère, but an attempt to exhume him found an empty grave. This reinforced rumors of his immortality, as did stories of his life in youth and traveling in places such as India and Turkey after his supposed death. His richly engraved tombstone is preserved in the Cluny Museum. Buddhism and Hinduism. The equivalent of the Philosopher's Stone in Buddhism and Hinduism is the Chintamani stone. In Buddhism, Chintamani is held by the Bodhisattvas Avalokitesvara, the embodiment of passion, and Sitigarbha. It is also seen carrying the back of the Lang Ta. Lang Ta is a Tibetan name, which means wind horse, which is depicted on Tibetan player flags. By reciting the Dharani of Chitamani, Buddhist tradition holds that one attains the wisdom of the Buddhas, is able to understand the truth of the Buddhas, and becomes fond of the body. It is said to be allowing one to see the holy entourage of Amitabha and its assembly of one deathbed. In the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, the Chitamani is sometimes depicted as a luminous pearl and being in possession of several of the different forms of Buddha. In Hinduism, it is connected with the gods Vishnu and Ganesha. In the Hindu tradition, it is many times represented as a fabulous jewel held by King Naga, or as the forehead of the Makara. The Yoga Vasistham Sutra, originally written in the 10th century after Christ, contains a story about the Philosopher's Stone. A great Hindu sage wrote about the spiritual realization of Gnosis or Jnana using the metaphor of the Philosopher's Stone. Sant Janesvar wrote commentary with 17 references to the Philosopher's Stone that explicitly transmutes metal into gold. The 7th century Indian sage Tirumolar, in his classical Tirumandandiram, explained the path of the human being to immortal divinity. In verse 2709, he states that the name of God, Shiva or Shambhala, is an alchemical vehicle that converts the body into immortal God. The eye that doesn't blink. That is another issue. Boris Johnson confirms that British citizens are 24 hours, 7 days of weeks, digests of the government's military and intelligence cyber operations. Boris Johnson has revealed some startling improvements in Britain's foreign and defense policies, which include propaganda campaigns aimed at its own people to generate cognitive impacts, i.e., to make them think right. This phraseology also resonates strongly in the British Army Handbook of Information Maneuvering, published last year. It states that conflict in the information age has obliterated the traditional distinction between home and abroad, in the process creating a grey zone between the peace and war. Since war are still won in people's minds, the Internet has become an integral part of the 21st century battlefield, so that both physical and virtual operations must coordinate, communicate, and amplify to generate cognitive impacts. In other words, a key audience for British military propaganda today is the country's own population. The military aims to shape British perceptions and behavior, just as it does with respect to the citizens, militaries, and governments of enemy states. The military's integrated operating concept to 2025 reinforces this troubling interpretation, similarly asserting that the old distinctions between peace and war, public and private, foreign and domestic, and state and non-state are increasingly outdated. The triumph of the narrative determines defeat or victory, hence the importance of information operation. The paper states, established techniques such as assassination, deception, economic coercion, espionage, intellectual property theft, and subversion gain potency throughout the clever use of digital, cyber, and social media information. UK Minister of Defence dogma states that it's fundamental practice for the armed forces to use deception and measures designed to mislead adversaries. Information can be used to create deception or as a camouflage and concealment to support deception, the file states. This can range from encouraging responsible use of social media by our own personnel throughout the promotion, development, and ongoing reinforcement of a culture of security to camouflage, concealment, and deception techniques. Europe. Massive flight of Parisians from the French capital in the hours before the entry into force of the new confinement decree by the executive. A confinement effective from this Saturday and which will affect for a month a third of the population of this country of 67 million inhabitants. Protests in Europe over restrictions. Demonstrators in Germany clashed with police on Saturday in protest against the restrictions. Officers used water cannons, pepper spray, and clubs against people trying to cross police barriers. More than 20,000 people took part in the protest in the central German city of Kassel, where there were also clashes between demonstrators and counter-demonstrators. Protests also took place in other European countries, including Austria, Great Britain, Finland, Romania, and Switzerland. Hundreds of people throughout Spain called for a law to ensure decent housing. Hundreds of people have taken to the streets of several Spanish cities to demand that the new state law on the right of housing, the right to housing guarantees real access to decent housing, and that it puts an end to taxation that benefit speculators at the highest incomes. More than 10 years of stagnation and recession in Argentina, added to the housing and labor problems caused by the health crisis in the most vulnerable sectors, have led to an increase in the number of homeless women, men, girls and boys, while at the same time the state budget to contain and reintegrate this population expelled from the system has been reduced. Cadiz, a hot zone of UFO sightings in Spain, with the declassification of millions of SIA files linked to the control of UFO sightings and paranormal phenomena around the world. Several phenomena in Spain stand out, and among them several historical cases in Cadiz. For ufologists in the area, it's the confirmation of years of work. Guatemala's Fuego Volcano records up to 11 eruptions per hour. The Fuego Volcano, or the volcano of fire, located in central Guatemala and one of the most active in Central America, recorded this Friday up to 11 eruptions per hour and the expulsion of ash and gases at high altitude. A volcano erupts near the capital of Iceland. The Fagradalsfjall volcano has erupted about 30 kilometers from the capital of Iceland, Reykjavik, in the southwestern tip of the island. Stunning images of lava rivers near Reykjavik, Iceland. The eruption of the Icelandic volcano on Friday left striking images of lava rivers in an incandescent glow visible from Reykjavik. Lava emerged throughout a crack in the Earth's crust hundreds of meters long, and a series of small fountains erupted. reddening the night sky. Meteorologists said the eruption was small and no one was in danger, while reporting that the volcano's activity registered a decrease this Saturday. Icelanders has been preparing for an eruption after the country recorded more than 40,000 earthquakes in a few weeks. Finland, the happiest country. The annual list of the world's happiest countries based on Gallup World Poll data places Finland for the fourth consecutive years as the happiest country in the world. The US moved from 18 to 14th place and Afghanistan moved to the bottom of the table. No Latin American country appears in the top 20. The list is based mainly on GDP, life expectancy, social support and freedom and income, among other points. But there are a lot of suicides in Finland. Rome seeks to prevent the world's oldest bank from falling into US hands. Italian authorities have been trying for years to find a buyer for the world's oldest banking operation, Banca Monte dei Paschi di Siena. Now it turns out that there is at least one offer on the table that they have refused to consider. A group of US investors, led by former Congressman Norman Dix, offered Italian officials a plan to save the bank by the end of 2020. Economy. Oil prices plunged in biggest drop so far this year. Major oil prices have plunged almost 10% in a single day. The worst fall so far this year comes against the backdrop of uncertainty about the economic recovery. Experts point out, however, that this is a temporary decline and point out that oil is 20% above its price at the beginning of the year. 90% of Syria's oil is in Washington's hands. Although Syria's oil resources are modest compared to its neighbors, they have been sufficient to ensure the country's energy self-sufficiency. However, since 2011, many of the wells have been damaged or occupied, first by radicals and then by the US and its allies. At least 90% of Syria's oil wells are today under the control of Washington and its allies, revealed Oil Minister Bassam Touma. The world faces an unprecedented threat of food shortages. Natural disasters, climate change, and diseases attacking crops and livestock are compounded by the impact of the health crisis on agriculture and food security, according to a new report by the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, called FAO. The agency stresses that at no other time in history has agriculture faced such a variety of risks in a hyper-connected world and rapidly changing landscape. Burger wars. McDonald's and Burger King have been battling for fast food supremacy since their founding in the 40s and 50s. Forbes tried to find the answer to the eternal question, Big Mac or Whopper. The long-standing rivalry between McDonald's and Burger King is known in the industry of the burger wars. McDonald's remained the leader in terms of revenue, while Burger King, whose revenue is much lower, is considered the king of advertising. Cruises returned to the Caribbean after a long pause due to health crisis. Two ships from U.S. cruise lines, Royal Caribbean and Celebrity, will be the first to return to the Caribbean starting next June after long industry standstill since March 2020. The iconic Miami Beach, Florida bar Clevelander announced a temporary closure as the city has not been able to control the crowds of college students during the spring break and doesn't want to put at risk its employees or the structure of the place, which has suffered damage in recent days. Russia reduces its dependence on the dollar. Russia is gradually reducing its dependence on the US dollar by increasing the use of national currencies in trade with the other countries, said the chairman of the lower house of the Russian parliament, Yaroslav Volodin. Turkish lira wobbles. Turkey's new central bank governor told bankers in a 90-minute call on Sunday that he planned to no immediate policy changes, seeking to reassure those predicting quick interest rate cuts and a sharp later sell-off when markets open. Cryptocurrencies using body activity data. Human body activity associated with the tax provided to a user can be used in a mining process of a cryptocurrency system. A server may provide a task to a device of a user that is coupled to the server, and sensor communicatively coupled to or comprised in the user's device may detect bodily activity of the user. What happens if the user dies? No answer. Policy or politics. Atlanta shooting of Asian women was racially motivated. Democratic U.S. Senator Tammy Duckworth on Sunday expressed doubt about FBI Director Chris Wray's initial assessment that the fatal shooting in six Asian women at Atlanta area spas may not constitute a hate crime, saying it appears racially motivated. Pentagon chief hints at sanctions if India buys Russian missile system. Pentagon chief Lloyd Austin urged India to reconsider its possible purchase of a Russian missile system, hinting to its long-time ally that the move could trigger US sanctions. Massive religious gathering worries India. India's health ministry warned Sunday that a large gathering of devotees for the big Hindu festival of Mahakumbha Mela that will peak in April in the Himalayan holy city of Haridwar by the Ganges could increase contagions. The festival is held only once every 12 years. Organizers have said that there are more than 150 million visitors are expected. As many Hindus believe, bathing in the river during this period absolves people of sins and brings salvation from the cycle of life and death. The festival is marked by ritual bathing in the waters, but it is also celebration of community commerce with several fairs, education, religious discourses by saints, mass feeding of monks or paupers, and entertainment spectacle. Seekers believe that bathing in these rivers is a means of atonement or penance for past wrongs and cleanses them of their sins. Air Force secretly obtained a new Russian missile system. Last summer, a secret US military flight to Libya took out one of Russia's most modern air defense weapon systems. The Air Force took the Pantsir S-1 surface-to-air missile system captured by Libyan government forces on a military transport flight to an unknown destination. The acquisition of a Pantsir designed to defend against US and NATO aircraft is a windfall for the US intelligence community. According to the Times, the secret mission to Libya took place in June 2020. The Pantsir, which the United Arab Emirates purchased from Russia and delivered to the Libyan government, had been abandoned and then captured by a local militia. Government forces eventually recovered the system and transferred it to a base housing Turkish military forces. Powerful earthquake shakes Japan. Japan recorded a powerful 7.2 magnitude earthquake Saturday that shook buildings in the capital, Tokyo, and triggered a tsunami warning for the country's northeastern coast as it struck in the northeastern Miyagi prefecture. No serious damage was reported, but several people suffered minor injuries. The focus on the earthquake was at a depth of 60 kilometers underwater. US-China clash at UN anti-racism event. The United States on Friday accused China of committing genocide and crimes against humanity against Uyghurs and other minorities, and Beijing responded by accusing Washington of discrimination, hatred, and even the savage murder of people of African and Asian descent. Philippines detects 220 Chinese boats in disputed area. The Philippine government expressed concern after spotting more than 225 Chinese fishing boats believed to be manned by Chinese maritime militiamen are concentrated in the Julian Felipe Reef of the West Philippine Sea, claimed by both countries. Philippines detect 220 Chinese. No, this is the same. This is the same new. Mexico. No. Philippines accuses Beijing of militarizing South China Sea. Philippines Defense Secretary Delfin Lorenzana has urged Beijing to remove vessels detected in the South China Sea, describing their presence in the disputed area as a violation of its nation's maritime rights. Mexico takes steps to reinforce its border with Guatemala. Mexico adopted new measures to prevent illegal crossings on its southern border with Guatemala. These include the deployment of militarized police and the use of drones and night vision systems to monitor entry points. Aztec laundering of 23 Mexican businessmen and politicians in the tax haven of Andorra. López Obrador reopened the fetid Aztec laundering of 6 years ago by 23 businessmen, politicians, and launderers in Andorra, where Juan Collado, lawyer, and 2 ex-presidents was its central axis. The Casa de Cambio Tiber house owner Carlos Demal Nemat is imprisoned in New York. The Fidemon Trust and Phantom Dutch Company participated in it. Since last year, the press in Madrid has been reporting on the account of the 23 businessmen and their Aztec laundering, and focused on 24 singular accounts of Juan Ramón Collado, notorious lawyer of former presidents Carlos Salinas de Gortari and Enrique Peña Nieto. Astronautics. Mission to clean up space debris. This weekend, a spacecraft with technology that seeks to help reduce space debris is launched into space. The company Astroscale will test a technique with magnets. Its first objective will be to capture a satellite and take it into the Earth's atmosphere, where it will burn up. Perseverance records Syria, a mysterious airy and mysterious high-pitched scratching noise of Mars. NASA has released a 60-minute audio recording of a mysterious high-pitched scratching-like noise picked up by the Perseverance rover. However, the audio of the unexpected scratching noise remains a mystery to NASA. The Perseverance engineering team continues to evaluate the source of the scratching noise, which may be electromagnetic interference from one of the rover's electronic boxes or interactions between the rover's mobility system and the Martian surface, NASA said in a statement. Experts in Mars anomalies assured that the scratches correspond to Martian creatures. They are based on the opinion of Dr. William Romoser, an entomologist with 45 years of experience, who in 2019 said that there are several insects on the Martian soil, so the mysterious sound picked up by the rover's microphones could be evidence of the existence of these creatures. Another hypothesis would be that Perseverance is not actually on the Red Planet, but rather on Devon Island in Canada, the largest inhabited island on Earth, where conspiracy theorists claim images and sounds from Mars are being sent. Jupiter and Saturn and 2 eclipses starring this spring. The planets Jupiter and Saturn shone at dawn in the spring sky, which began Saturday at 10:37 Peninsula time, and in which took place a total lunar eclipse and an annular eclipse of the Sun. During the night of the spring equinox, Mars could be observed throughout the season, while Mercury will be visible in May and Venus in April. On May 26th, there will be a total lunar eclipse that will be observed from Asia, Australia, the Pacific, and America, but not in Spain. On June 10th, an annular eclipse of the Sun is expected to be visible as partial in North America, Europe, and Asia. Together, but not mixed up. Message from Evo of Vega by Sharon Stewart. Human beings instinctively want to connect with each other. When the later wars broke out, Lyrans and Vegans went to live in other constellations. They went to Sirius, Orion, the Pleiades, I think later. Spreading out and starting new communities on other worlds ensured the survival of the human species, which seemed less able to deal with the draconic problem at that point in history, which was millions of years ago. They were more like us, third and fourth dimensional people with less multidimensional capabilities. In fact, the vegans put a lot of effort into their technology, while the Lyrans put a lot of effort into their spirituality. But they really had to merge to protect everyone from his new threat. Separating groups of people and going to live on other planets seems contradictory to what humans instinctively do, and that is to group together, not separate. You must live among all those around you and depend on them, and in this way you will prosper. You are all at odds with your neighbors, co-workers, strangers on the street. This is because the dark ones have separated you from your higher consciousness, which tells you that humans are good, and the more you know, the better off you are. The world needs healing, and the more healing you experience, the more you will realize that what you need is to unify with other humans. Your loveless way of being comes from the fact that you are constantly traumatized. A traumatized person will see through a particular pair of glasses that tells them that others are unloving. It takes a lot of work to remove these glasses and become vulnerable to oneself among others who cannot. A human being separated from other human beings becomes weak. In groups, you are stronger. In groups of loving members, you are even stronger. But the average human being on Earth is so toxic that he can't get along with few people. When you try, argument breaks out. Now you see why your world is as divided as you are. And that's all for today. Thanks a lot, dear friend, and have a happy weekend.